She woke up before the sun, the faint light barely touching the edges of the small room she rented. The air was cool and still, carrying the quiet calm of a city that was slowly stirring. She stretched her arms, listening to the soft hum of distant traffic and the occasional birds waking up. Life had been simple and difficult at the same time, a delicate balance of effort and survival. Her day would soon start, and there was no room for delays. After quickly washing her face and brushing her hair, she prepared a simple breakfast, just enough to give her the energy she needed. The apartment was small and sparsely furnished, with a single chair, a tiny table, and a bed tucked into the corner. It was far from perfect, but it was her space, her quiet corner of the world. She moved around efficiently, as if every motion had a purpose, every step measured. This was how she survived each day, quietly, without drawing attention. By the time she left the apartment, the streets were beginning to fill with the sounds of people heading to work, cars honking, and the occasional chatter of neighbors. She walked briskly, holding a small bag with her essentials, keeping her head down, blending into the crowd. The cafe where she worked was not far, just a few blocks away, and the routine was familiar. She had worked there for years, and every corner, every chair, every table felt like part of her daily rhythm. The cafe itself was cozy but often busy. The smell of fresh bread and brewing coffee filled the air, mingling with the faint scent of pastries cooling on the counter. Regular customers moved in and out, some with smiles, others in a rush, but all part of the background she had learned to navigate with grace. She greeted each one with a polite nod or a soft good morning, even when her own mood was heavy. Her focus was never on herself but on the work she had to do, on making sure everyone else felt taken care of. As the morning rush began, she moved from table to table with practiced ease. She refilled cups, took orders and balanced trays, all while listening to the background chatter. Customers were unaware of the quiet determination in her eyes, the way she handled each task as if it were a delicate piece of a larger puzzle. There was a rhythm to her movements, a silent music in the way she worked, though no one knew it yet. Her coworkers were friendly enough, some chatting idly when things slowed down, others focused on their own tasks. She never really joined in the conversations, though, preferring to keep to herself. It was not that she was unfriendly, but rather that her mind was often elsewhere, wandering through melodies and harmonies that only she could hear. The cafe was her stage in a way, even if no one recognized it. The trays she carried, the clink of cups, the soft thud of pastries being placed on plates, all of it created a rhythm she had learned to appreciate. There was a piano in the corner of the cafe, old and dusty, rarely touched. Most customers didn't even notice it, and the staff treated it as part of the decor. She, however, had a different relationship with it. She had discovered it years ago, hidden beneath a thin layer of dust and neglect, and it had become her secret companion. In the quiet moments, when the cafe slowed and the crowd thinned, she would sit at the piano and play softly, just for herself. The notes were tentative at first, but gradually, they flowed, telling stories only she could understand. It was her escape, her solace, and her way of connecting with something larger than herself. Even in the midst of a busy day, her mind often drifted to the piano. She would imagine herself there, fingers gliding over the keys, creating music that could touch hearts. It was a hidden skill, one she had never shared with anyone outside of fleeting, private moments. The thought of exposing it brought both fear and excitement. She feared judgment, being laughed at, or dismissed as just another waitress with dreams too big for her reality. Yet, there was a part of her that longed for someone to hear, to truly recognize what she could do. Her life had taught her patience and perseverance. She had learned to carry burdens without complaint, and to keep her dreams alive quietly, nurturing them like fragile flowers in the shadows. She had faced challenges that could have broken others, yet she continued, day after day, believing that one day, something would change. The world had a way of being harsh, but it also had moments of beauty, and she clung to those moments as proof that life could be more than just survival. As the morning turned into afternoon, the cafe remained busy, and she continued her work with unwavering dedication. She noticed small things others overlooked, the way a customer lingered with a thoughtful expression, the smile of someone enjoying their first sip of coffee, the subtle joy in a child's laughter as they pointed at a pastry. She took these moments quietly to heart, letting them fill her with a sense of purpose. Her life might seem ordinary to the outside eye, but to her, every small detail was meaningful, every interaction a thread in the fabric of her daily existence. Lunch came and went, and the cafe began to calm down. The crowd thinned, leaving pockets of quiet. This was her moment. She glanced at the piano, and for a brief second, she allowed herself to dream. No one noticed as she walked over, lifted the cover, and touched the keys lightly. The sound was soft but pure, filling the empty spaces of the cafe with gentle music. Her fingers moved naturally, recalling melodies she had kept secret for years. The music spoke of longing, hope, and hidden beauty, resonating in ways words could not. It was during these moments that she felt truly alive. The piano transformed her world, turning the mundane into something magical. She could imagine a life where she played not just for herself but for others who could feel what she felt. The thought both thrilled and terrified her, for it meant stepping into the light, revealing a part of herself that had always been hidden. Yet, even if the world never recognized it, the music remained hers, a treasure no one could take away. As the day came to an end, she cleaned her section, organized the trays, and prepared to leave. The cafe would close, and the quiet of the evening would settle in. She paused for a moment by the piano, letting her fingers hover over the keys. There was a promise in the air, a sense that something was waiting just beyond the routine, beyond the familiarity of her daily life. She smiled softly, a small, private smile, and whispered a silent promise to herself that one day, the world would hear her music. She walked home as the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the streets. The day had been long, as always, but there was a lightness in her step, a quiet excitement she carried like a secret flame. Her life was not glamorous or easy, but it was hers, and within it lay hidden treasures waiting to be discovered. The piano, the music, and her dreams were all pieces of a world that no one else could see yet. And she knew that one day, those pieces would come together in ways that would surprise everyone, including herself. She returned to her small apartment, tired but content. She prepared a simple dinner, ate quietly, and then sat by the window, looking out at the city lights. The world moved on, unaware of the quiet determination that rested in her little room. She picked up a notebook and jotted down musical ideas, small sketches of melodies that might one day become full songs. Each note was a step closer to revealing her hidden skill, a skill that had the power to stop a room in silence when the time was right. Before going to bed, she allowed herself one final daydream. She imagined sitting at the piano, people gathered around, listening in awe, the music filling every corner of the room. She could feel the vibrations of the keys, hear the expressions of joy and wonder, and experience the connection that only music could create. It was a comforting thought, a guiding light in the ordinary life she led. Finally, she lay down, letting sleep wash over her, carrying her into dreams where music and reality intertwined. The day had been long, but her journey had just begun. Hidden within the simple tasks of her life was a talent that would one day shine, a talent that would change not only her world, but the world of those who were fortunate enough to hear it. And in that quiet apartment, under the soft glow of the city lights, she drifted to sleep, unaware of how close she was to a moment that would expose her hidden skill and leave everyone around her in total silence. The next day began like any other, with the city slowly waking up under the pale morning light. She followed the same routine, preparing quickly, leaving her apartment, and walking briskly toward the cafe. But something in the air felt different, a faint tension that made her senses sharper. Today, the cafe would be busier than usual, and not because of regular customers. There was an event, a small gathering of important guests who had booked the cafe for a private afternoon meeting. No one knew exactly who they were, only that they were special and that their presence would change the usual rhythm of the place. She arrived early, as always, and began setting up her section with precise care. Every cup, every napkin, every chair had to be in order. The cafe itself was already bustling with staff preparing for the event. Decorations were placed carefully, tables arranged neatly, and a few extra pastries were brought out for the guests. The piano, tucked quietly in the corner, seemed more noticeable today, its presence almost demanding attention. She paused for a moment, glancing at it, and felt a familiar warmth rise in her chest. It had been a long time since she had played during a busy day, and the thought made her heart race. As the guests began to arrive, she noticed their confident air, the way they moved with authority and subtle impatience. There were a few familiar faces, people she had seen before in the city, and some new ones with an aura of wealth and importance. She greeted each politely, guiding them to their seats and taking orders with her usual calm efficiency. Her movements were smooth, practiced, but there was an undercurrent of tension she could not ignore. Today, she was aware of more than just serving tables. She was aware of a world that seemed far beyond her reach, yet somehow connected to the quiet part of herself that longed for recognition. One of the guests, a tall man with a commanding presence, noticed the piano. He approached casually, glancing at the keys and then at her. A smile played across his face, not unpleasant, but challenging in a way that made her uneasy. He asked if anyone could play it, and a few staff members shook their heads politely. His eyes lingered on her, and he asked, almost teasingly, if she could play. The words were simple, but the weight behind them was heavy. It was not just a question. It was a test, a quiet invitation to reveal something hidden. She hesitated, her fingers brushing the edge of the piano without thinking. The room seemed to hold its breath, the usual clatter of cups and chatter fading into a soft silence. She felt the eyes of the guests on her, measuring, waiting. A coworker leaned in slightly, whispering encouragement, reminding her that she had the skill, that she could do this. But encouragement was a thin shield against the storm of nerves that rose inside her. She had kept this talent private for so long, and now it was staring her in the face, demanding exposure. With a quiet resolve, she sat at the piano. Her fingers hovered over the keys, feeling the familiar cool surface, the potential in every note. The first sound she made was soft, almost hesitant, as if testing the waters. Then, slowly, the music began to flow. What started as a simple melody grew, gaining depth and confidence. She closed her eyes, losing herself in the rhythm, letting the notes tell the story she had kept locked away for years. The guests, initially chatting quietly among themselves, began to notice. Conversations slowed, eyes turned toward the piano, and the room fell into an unusual quiet. Her music filled the space, wrapping around each listener, drawing them into a world they did not expect. There was no showmanship, no need to impress. The beauty of the music spoke for itself. She felt the tension leave her shoulders, replaced by a sense of connection she had rarely experienced. This was her world, momentarily intersecting with theirs, and it was real, tangible, and powerful. She played with her heart, every note a reflection of years spent dreaming in silence. The music carried emotions she had never dared to express aloud. Longing, hope, joy, and a quiet sorrow that had been part of her life for too long. The guests were captivated, their earlier authority softened by the unexpected grace of her performance. Some leaned forward slightly, eyes wide, while others sat back, letting the sound wash over them. Even the tall man who had challenged her now watched with an expression that combined surprise and admiration. As the melody reached a delicate climax, the cafe seemed to hold its breath. For a brief moment, no one moved, no one spoke, and even the usual ambient sounds of the cafe disappeared. It was a moment suspended in time, where the ordinary boundaries of space and status dissolved, and only the music remained. She felt a thrill of both fear and liberation. This was exposure, yes, but it was also freedom. She was no longer hiding, no longer playing for herself alone. She was sharing a piece of her soul with everyone present. The final notes lingered in the air, soft and clear, leaving a quiet echo that seemed to settle gently over the room. Slowly, the silence broke, first with a quiet murmur, then with applause, genuine and heartfelt. Some guests were visibly moved, leaning back with expressions of wonder, while others approached her with smiles, nods, and words of praise. The moment was surreal, a mix of disbelief and joy, and she stood, feeling the warmth of recognition she had never experienced before. The tall man stepped forward, extending his hand with a smile that carried respect rather than challenge. He complimented her skill, asking where she had learned to play with such depth and emotion. She shook her head, a soft smile on her lips, unsure how to respond. Years of keeping her talent secret had left her unprepared for this kind of attention. Yet, deep inside, a quiet pride began to grow, a realization that her skill was not just hers to hide. It was something that could touch others in ways she had only imagined. The guests continued to interact with her, some asking questions about her music, others complimenting the choice of melodies. She answered as best she could, still modest, still humble, yet there was a new lightness in her tone. The cafe, which had always been just a workplace, now felt like a stage, a place where ordinary life could intersect with moments of unexpected beauty. She understood, perhaps for the first time, that talent could not remain hidden forever, that the courage to share it could transform even the most ordinary day. Throughout the afternoon, she noticed small details that had gone unnoticed before. The way people leaned in, the subtle smiles of appreciation, the way conversations lingered on the music rather than business or social status. It was a revelation, a reminder that art, even in its simplest form, could bridge divides and create connection. She felt a shift within herself, a growing sense of possibility, and for the first time, the future seemed open in ways she had never imagined. As the event concluded and the guests began to leave, she helped clear tables and pack up the remaining pastries. The cafe was returning to its normal rhythm, but the air still carried traces of the afternoon's magic. Her co-workers were quieter than usual, perhaps sensing the change, or perhaps waiting for the story of what had happened to unfold naturally. She returned to the piano one last time, pressing a few gentle keys, not performing, but just allowing herself to linger in the afterglow of the experience. The sound was softer now, intimate, a private reflection on a public moment. When the cafe finally emptied, she took a deep breath and stepped outside. The city was bathed in the warm light of late afternoon, and the streets were alive with movement. She walked home slowly, savoring the quiet satisfaction of the day. Her mind replayed moments of the performance, the reactions of the guests, the way the music had filled the room and transformed the ordinary into something extraordinary. It was a reminder that hidden skills, once revealed, could create ripples far beyond their origin, touching hearts and leaving lasting impressions. At her small apartment, she reflected on the events of the day. The piano had been her secret for so long, but now it had become a bridge, connecting her inner world with the lives of others. She realized that fear had held her back, not talent, and that courage to step forward, even in small ways, could change everything. The experience left her both exhilarated and thoughtful, aware that her life was on the brink of new possibilities. As evening settled in, she sat by the window with a cup of tea, watching the city lights flicker. The day had been extraordinary, and though it was over, its impact would linger. She knew that moments like these did not come often, but when they did, they were worth everything. The nerves, the hesitation, and the risk of being exposed. She allowed herself a quiet smile, acknowledging the journey she had begun and the talent that had finally found its voice. Before sleep, she picked up her notebook again, jotting down melodies inspired by the day. Each note was a memory, a reflection, a promise to herself. She drifted to bed with a sense of fulfillment, knowing that her hidden skill had been revealed, and that it had the power to touch lives. And though the world outside continued on its ordinary course, she felt that she had stepped into a moment that would change everything, quietly yet profoundly, for her and for anyone who might hear her music in the days to come. The following morning, she woke with a sense of anticipation she had never felt before. The events of the previous day kept replaying in her mind. The quiet amazement of the guests, the subtle shift in how her co-workers looked at her, and most of all, the feeling of her music finally being heard. She got ready slowly, savoring the calm before the day began, aware that nothing would feel quite the same again. Even the walk to the cafe felt different. The streets seemed brighter, more alive, as if the city itself had noticed the change. When she arrived, the cafe was already busy, as it always was, but there was an extra energy in the air. Some customers were returning after hearing rumors of the performance yesterday, curious to see the woman who had captured attention so unexpectedly. She greeted them politely, maintaining her usual calm exterior, but inside, her heart was racing with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. The piano in the corner called to her in a way it never had before, not just as a piece of furniture, but as a companion and partner in something greater. The day passed with the usual tasks, taking orders, serving food, refilling drinks, but her mind kept drifting to the piano. She imagined sitting there again, letting her fingers glide over the keys, filling the room with music. She thought about the reactions of yesterday, the awe, the silence, the unexpected applause, and it gave her courage. For the first time, she considered the idea of performing not just for herself, but for the world, and the thought was both thrilling and terrifying. In the afternoon, a familiar face appeared at the cafe door. It was one of the guests from the event yesterday, a person who had seemed impressed but distant, now returning with a genuine smile. They approached her and asked if she would play again, if she could share the music that had moved so many people. She hesitated, glancing at the piano with a mixture of fear and longing. It was one thing to play in secret, another entirely to perform with someone watching, expecting her to deliver the same magic. But she nodded, her fingers trembling slightly as she approached the keys. The moment she touched them, a wave of familiarity and comfort washed over her. The first notes were soft, delicate, and steady, flowing naturally as if the piano itself remembered her touch. The melody grew, intricate and expressive, weaving stories in the air that could not be captured by words alone. The guest watched quietly, their eyes wide with admiration, and soon others began to gather, drawn by the unexpected music. The cafe, usually filled with the chatter of customers, quieted again. Conversations died down, replaced by the sound of the piano. She played with every ounce of her heart, letting her emotions guide her fingers. There was joy in the music, a sweetness that touched those who listened. And there was also longing, a deep undercurrent that spoke of years spent waiting and dreaming in silence. Each note was a piece of her soul, and the room responded with a rare, almost sacred attention. She felt herself losing track of time. Minutes turned into an hour, but the music did not falter. The guests, some familiar and some new, remained captivated, leaning forward in their seats, eyes fixed on her hands as they danced across the keys. It was not just the technical skill that held them, but the depth of feeling, the vulnerability, and honesty in every sound. Her performance was no longer about proving herself. It was about connecting, and the connection was palpable. For the first time, she allowed herself to fully embrace the attention, feeling a sense of freedom she had never known. Her nervousness melted away, replaced by focus and a kind of exhilaration that only comes when one does something they were born to do. The piano became an extension of herself, each note an expression of her inner world, unspoken yet deeply understood. The cafe had transformed, from a place of work into a place of art, where ordinary life and extraordinary talent collided. The tall man from yesterday, who had issued the initial challenge, returned mid-performance, leaning against a wall and watching silently. There was a subtle shift in his demeanor, a recognition that went beyond words. He had doubted, and now he was learning that talent often hides in places one least expects. She continued, unaware of his presence, lost in the music, feeling both vulnerable and empowered. As she played, she began to notice subtle reactions around her. The soft gasps, the quiet smiles, the glimmer of emotion in the eyes of listeners. Some were moved to tears, others to awe, but all were affected. The music transcended words, transcended social barriers and personal preconceptions, reaching straight to the human heart. In those moments, she realized that her hidden skill was not merely a personal treasure. It was a gift she could share, a bridge connecting herself to others in ways that nothing else could. The climax of her performance arrived naturally, a swell of harmony that carried both power and tenderness. She had played for years in silence, building this repertoire in secret, and now it revealed itself fully, effortlessly, yet with careful precision. The room held its breath as the final notes resonated, lingering longer than expected, filling the air with a quiet echo of beauty. It was a moment of triumph, not for recognition alone, but for the courage to let her skill be seen, to let her voice be heard. Silence followed for a few heartbeats, fragile and expectant, before it was broken by genuine applause. The sound was immediate, heartfelt, and overwhelming. The cafe erupted into a mix of clapping, whispered admiration, and the subtle murmur of those still absorbing what they had witnessed. She stood, cheeks flushed, feeling a mixture of relief, pride, and a new kind of humility. For the first time, she understood the power of sharing a hidden talent, and the impact it could have on the world around her. The guest who had returned earlier approached her once more, offering praise and curiosity about her background and experience. She responded softly, carefully, sharing just enough to give a glimpse into the years of practice, the private moments spent nurturing her skill, and the dreams that had driven her to continue despite uncertainty. Her words were simple, but her presence was powerful, and the guest listened with genuine interest, clearly recognizing the journey she had undertaken. As the afternoon wore on, more people came to witness her playing. Word spread quickly. The cafe became a quiet hub of attention, drawing in curious onlookers who had heard about the woman whose music could stop a room in silence. She found herself performing intermittently, not out of obligation, but out of a desire to connect, to share the emotion that had been locked inside her for so long. Each performance built upon the last, creating a momentum that felt both natural and exhilarating. Her co-workers watched with mixed feelings, pride, curiosity, and a touch of astonishment. They had known her as a quiet, hard-working waitress, and now they saw a different side, a depth and talent that had always existed but had never been revealed. Some were inspired, others reflective, but all recognized that the woman who had served them countless times was now someone entirely new in their eyes. She was no longer just part of the background. She was the center of attention, commanding it with humility and grace. As evening approached, the cafe returned to a semblance of normalcy, though the day had left a lasting impression. She packed up her belongings, tidied her section, and paused by the piano. She pressed a few gentle keys, not performing for anyone, but for herself, reflecting on the day and the remarkable journey that had brought her to this moment. The music was soft, intimate, a quiet conversation between her and the instrument that had been her companion through years of silent dreaming. Walking home under the fading light, she felt a sense of possibility she had never experienced before. The city around her seemed transformed, the streets alive with potential and promise. She thought about the guests, the reactions, and the unspoken connections she had forged through her music. It was a revelation, an understanding that hidden skills, when revealed with courage, could open doors and touch lives in ways she had never imagined. At her apartment, she sat by the window with a notebook and began to write down melodies inspired by the day. Each note was a reflection of emotion, a record of experiences, and a promise to herself that this was only the beginning. She realized that her life, once confined to routines and modest survival, was expanding into a world of possibilities where her talent could shine and reach those who needed it. And as she prepared for sleep, she allowed herself a small, contented smile, knowing that her music had begun to change not only her world, but the hearts of those who had heard it. The journey was far from over, but she had taken the most important step, allowing her hidden skill to be fully exposed, and discovering the power of silence, attention, and connection that music could bring. The next morning, she woke with a mixture of excitement and quiet anxiety. The events of the last few days had changed something inside her. The piano, once just a hidden corner of the cafe, now felt like a bridge to a world she had only dreamed of. As she prepared for work, she felt a nervous energy, a subtle anticipation of what might happen today. The city streets seemed different, as if they were hinting at opportunities she had never noticed before. Each step toward the cafe carried a feeling that something significant was about to unfold. The cafe was alive with activity when she arrived. Regular customers moved through their routines, but there was an underlying buzz she could sense. Word of her performance had spread, and there were more people curious to see the woman who had turned an ordinary cafe into a place of wonder. Even her co-workers seemed more attentive, their eyes following her with a mixture of curiosity and quiet admiration. She smiled politely at them, feeling a gentle warmth in knowing that her talent was beginning to be noticed and appreciated. As the morning progressed, she went about her tasks, taking orders, serving tables, and keeping the cafe running smoothly. Yet, her mind kept returning to the piano, to the melodies that had captivated the guests. There was a sense of urgency in her thoughts, a feeling that today could bring a new challenge, a new opportunity to show the depth of her skill. She glanced at the piano from time to time, its quiet presence a constant reminder of the journey she had begun. It was more than just an instrument. It was a symbol of possibility, a doorway to experiences she had longed for but had never dared to seek. Around midday, a group of visitors arrived. They were different from the usual crowd, confident and sharp in their demeanor, clearly accustomed to attention and respect. They asked about the piano, and naturally they were told that she had performed in the cafe. Their expressions shifted from polite curiosity to intrigue, and one of them suggested that she play for them. The suggestion was casual, yet it carried weight. It was no longer a private skill. It was something that could be requested, expected even by those who recognized its value. She hesitated for a moment, feeling the familiar tremor of nerves. Performing in front of strangers was one thing, but now it felt different. There was an expectation, an unspoken pressure, and yet a part of her longed for it. She approached the piano, sitting down carefully, letting her fingers rest lightly on the keys. The first notes she played were soft, tentative, as if testing the waters of this new stage. Gradually, the melody grew, gaining confidence, depth, and beauty. Each note seemed to weave a story, carrying emotion and expression in ways words could not. The visitors leaned forward, their attention fixed, and soon, the cafe fell into a rare silence. The regular sounds of clinking dishes and murmured conversation faded as her music filled the room. She played not for recognition or approval, but because it was who she was, and this was the language she had learned to speak through her years of practice. The piano became an extension of her being, translating feelings and experiences into sound, sharing a part of herself she had kept hidden for too long. As she continued, she noticed subtle reactions from those around her. A few people's eyes glistened with emotion, others nodded in quiet appreciation, and some simply watched, captivated by the transformation of the ordinary into something extraordinary. The tall man who had first challenged her appeared again, leaning casually against the counter, a smile of genuine admiration on his face. He had doubted, yet now he understood that talent often hides in unexpected places, waiting for courage and opportunity to bring it into the light. The performance reached a point where the music swelled, becoming more intricate and expressive. She played with both technical precision and heartfelt emotion, feeling the room respond to every note. It was not about applause or praise. It was about connection, about sharing a piece of herself that could resonate with others. The cafe had become a sanctuary of music, a temporary world where everyday concerns faded and only the beauty of sound remained. When the final notes rang out, the room held its breath for a moment, reluctant to break the spell. Then, slowly, applause began, soft at first and then growing into genuine, heartfelt appreciation. Some visitors were visibly moved, leaning back with expressions of awe, while others approached her, offering praise and questions about her background and inspiration. The moment was surreal, a mixture of disbelief, joy, and the realization that her hidden skill had finally been recognized in a meaningful way. In the quiet that followed, she felt a wave of emotion herself. The journey she had taken, the years of secret practice, the quiet hope and persistence, all converged in this moment. She understood that talent, once revealed, could change not just her own life but the perception and experiences of those around her. The music had created a bond, a shared understanding, that transcended ordinary social barriers, leaving everyone present with a sense of something rare and profound. The visitors lingered, asking more questions and expressing genuine interest in her story. She responded with humility, sharing small details of her journey without exaggeration or pretense. The tall man nodded in quiet approval, his earlier skepticism replaced by respect. Her co-workers, now fully aware of the depth of her skill, watched with pride and amazement, seeing her in a new light. The cafe, which had always been a place of work, now felt like a stage, a place where hidden potential could be revealed and celebrated. As the afternoon progressed, she took a brief break, stepping outside for fresh air. The city seemed to hum with possibility, each street and corner reflecting the changes she felt inside. She thought about the guests, the reactions, and the subtle shifts in perception she had witnessed. It was clear that her life was no longer confined to routines and quiet survival. It was expanding into a realm where her talent could be recognized and appreciated. This realization filled her with both excitement and determination, knowing that she could no longer keep her skill hidden. Returning to the cafe, she noticed a small group of regular customers gathered near the piano, quietly waiting, curious to see her play. She approached, greeting them softly, and began to play again, not for performance, but to share the joy and emotion of music. The room responded with the same quiet reverence as before, each listener connecting to the sound in their own way. It was a reminder that talent was not just for grand stages or important guests. It could touch lives in the simplest, most personal ways. By evening, the cafe returned to its usual rhythm, though the memory of the day's performances lingered in the air. She cleaned her section, organized the tables, and glanced at the piano one last time, pressing a few gentle keys in private reflection. The music was soft and intimate, a conversation with herself, a quiet acknowledgement of how far she had come. She understood that her journey was just beginning, that each day brought opportunities to grow, connect, and share her skill in ways she had never imagined. Walking home under the soft glow of streetlights, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The city moved around her, ordinary and bustling, but she carried within her a new confidence and awareness of her potential. She thought about the people she had touched with her music, the connections she had made, and the possibilities that lay ahead. It was a reminder that courage, even in small steps, could reveal hidden talents and create moments of beauty that could resonate far beyond their origin. At her apartment, she settled by the window with a notebook, recording new melodies inspired by the day. Each note was a reflection of her experiences, a promise to herself to continue sharing her skill, and a reminder that hidden talent, once revealed, could leave a lasting impact. She felt a quiet excitement for the days to come, knowing that the world had glimpsed her ability and that her journey of discovery and expression was far from over. Before sleep, she allowed herself to imagine future possibilities, performances, connections, and the joy of touching hearts with her music. She understood now that talent was not meant to be hidden indefinitely. It was a gift to be shared, nurtured, and celebrated. And as she drifted into sleep, she carried with her a sense of purpose, hope, and the knowledge that her hidden skill had been exposed, leaving everyone around her in quiet admiration and total silence, ready for the next chapter of her life. The morning light crept softly into her room, bringing with it a calm yet electric anticipation. Today felt different. She had grown used to the quiet recognition she had begun to receive, but now she sensed that her journey was moving into a new phase. She went through her morning routine with the usual care, but her thoughts were alive with possibilities. The piano, now no longer just a hidden corner of the cafe, had become a symbol of opportunity and a reminder that her life could change in ways she had only dreamed of. The streets to the cafe were busier than usual, with a mix of regulars and newcomers who had heard whispers about the woman whose music could stop a room in silence. As she walked, she noticed faces turning toward her, curious eyes watching, some smiling politely, some with obvious recognition. The city felt different, more connected, as if her talent had somehow shifted the atmosphere around her. She smiled quietly to herself, letting the thought bring warmth and confidence as she entered the cafe. Inside, the staff and regular customers greeted her with familiarity and respect. There was no jealousy or resentment, only a shared sense of awe at what they had seen in the past days. She felt their quiet encouragement, a reassurance that her skill had made a mark. The piano stood in the corner, quietly waiting, almost alive in its presence. Today, she knew, would not be like the ordinary days she had grown accustomed to. There was a sense of importance in the air, a subtle pressure that she welcomed rather than feared. Mid-morning, a small group of visitors arrived unexpectedly. They were from the local music community, organizers of events, and people who had heard about her performance through word of mouth. They were curious, impressed, and hopeful, eager to hear the talent that had caused such a stir. One of them approached gently and asked if she could play for them. The question, though polite, carried weight. It was an opportunity, one she had never imagined would come so soon. She felt a flutter of nerves but also a thrill of excitement. This was what she had been waiting for, a chance to share her hidden skill on a larger stage. She walked to the piano with a steady yet graceful motion, her fingers brushing the keys lightly as if greeting an old friend. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, letting her mind clear, focusing entirely on the music within her. The first notes were soft, tentative, but they quickly gained strength and depth. Her fingers moved with natural confidence, translating years of practice and private dreaming into melodies that filled the cafe with warmth and emotion. The visitors and regulars alike fell silent, drawn into the music. Her melodies spoke of hope, perseverance, and quiet beauty. Each note carried the weight of her experiences, her struggles, and her hidden aspirations. She was no longer merely playing. She was communicating, connecting with everyone present through a language beyond words. The cafe became a sanctuary, a place where ordinary lives were touched by extraordinary expression. People leaned in, eyes wide, faces softened, and even those who had been skeptical before found themselves captivated. The performance grew more complex and expressive, moving seamlessly from gentle, flowing passages to powerful, dynamic chords. She poured her soul into every sound, feeling the room respond to her emotions. The music created a connection, binding everyone together in a shared experience of beauty and wonder. Her nerves had disappeared entirely, replaced by a sense of purpose and exhilaration. This was what she was meant to do, and the realization filled her with joy. Among the listeners, some were visibly moved. A few had tears in their eyes, others simply smiled with a quiet sense of understanding. The tall man who had first doubted her appeared again, this time with a respectful nod and a faint smile of acknowledgement. He had seen the transformation, understood the depth of her talent, and could not deny the impact of what he had witnessed. The guests and regulars alike were absorbed, forgetting time, space, and the ordinary concerns of their daily lives. In those moments, she realized that her hidden skill had become a bridge, connecting hearts and minds in ways she had only imagined. As the performance reached its climax, the music swelled with emotion and precision, the final notes resonating through the cafe, lingering in the air with a quiet intensity. She allowed herself to feel the culmination of years of practice, patience, and quiet hope. When the last sound faded, there was a moment of stillness, a collective breath held in appreciation of the beauty that had just unfolded. Then, applause erupted, sincere and heartfelt, filling the room with sound and admiration. The visitors approached her, offering words of praise, curiosity, and admiration. They asked about her background, her inspiration, and the countless hours she must have devoted to perfecting her craft. She spoke modestly, sharing small pieces of her journey, emphasizing dedication, patience, and the joy of music rather than seeking attention or glory. Her words carried honesty, reflecting the quiet strength she had cultivated over the years. The recognition she received was not just for skill, but for the authenticity and emotion that infused every note she played. Throughout the afternoon, more people came, drawn by the stories and the music that had captivated everyone. She played intermittently, each time with the same intensity and emotional connection, allowing the melodies to reach each listener in their own way. The cafe had transformed into a hub of shared experiences, a place where hidden talent could shine and inspire others. She realized that her music could have a lasting impact, not through fame or wealth, but through the emotional resonance that touched hearts and left lasting impressions. Her co-workers watched with admiration, now fully aware of the extraordinary skill that had been quietly nurtured alongside her daily work. They approached her with respect and encouragement, their earlier skepticism replaced by genuine support. She understood that her talent was no longer hidden, that it had the power to transform ordinary perceptions and create opportunities for growth and connection. The piano, once just an instrument, had become a symbol of her courage and the possibilities that lay ahead. As evening approached, the cafe began to settle back into its usual rhythm. The visitors had departed, but their impression remained, leaving the staff and regulars with a sense of awe and reflection. She took a moment to sit at the piano alone, pressing a few gentle notes for herself. The sound was soft and intimate, a personal acknowledgement of her journey and the transformation that had taken place. She understood that this was just the beginning, that her life was expanding into a realm where her hidden skill could continue to touch lives and create moments of beauty. Walking home under the warm glow of the city lights, she felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The day had been extraordinary, and yet she knew it was a step in a larger journey. Her hidden skill had been exposed, and the impact it had created left her feeling both humbled and empowered. She reflected on the courage it had taken to share her talent, the risks of vulnerability, and the rewards that came from embracing her abilities. The city around her seemed alive with potential, and she felt ready to explore the opportunities that awaited. At her apartment, she settled by the window, notebook in hand, recording new melodies inspired by the day. Each note captured emotion, experience, and aspiration, a promise to herself that her music would continue to grow and evolve. She thought about the future, about the connections she could make, and the joy that her talent could bring to others. It was a realization that her journey was far from over, that each day offered the chance to reach new heights, and that her hidden skill had the power to leave lasting impressions wherever it was shared. Before sleep, she allowed herself a quiet daydream, imagining stages, audiences, and the transformative power of music. She knew that talent, once revealed, could create ripples far beyond what she had anticipated, affecting lives, inspiring hope, and fostering connection. The hidden skill she had nurtured in silence had finally found its voice, and she understood that the courage to share it had unlocked a world of possibility. She drifted into sleep with a sense of peace, accomplishment, and anticipation, ready for whatever the next chapter of her life would bring, knowing that her music had the power to move hearts and create moments of total silence and profound awe.